Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you are new here, welcome. If you are not, then welcome back. So today we are doing tidbits with Tomeka, and with that being said, we're going to talk about credit cards today. So there are so many myths when it comes down to credit cards and things that you can do, you can't do, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and we're going to talk about that today, and we're going to try to see if we can straighten out some of those myths for you. So if that's something that you're interested in, then make sure you keep on watching. Before we get into that, let me remind you that I am involved in a giveaway with 4 other women here on YouTube. So make sure you look and check the description box below so that you'll be able to enter into the giveaway. Please make sure that you read the description box carefully, because that gives you all the details of the giveaway and where you should put your hashtag week 3 giveaway and whose video you should comment that under. So please make sure you read the description box in full. So let's jump right on into what we came here for. So the first thing that we're going to talk about are the types of credit cards that are out there. We all have different stages of our life where we are in need of different types of credit cards. So you have credit cards that have rewards, you have credit cards that have cash back, you have credit cards that are, you know, just for shopping. You may go to Old Navy or TJ Maxx or something like that, Sam's Club, and they cater to different needs depending on where you are in life. You also have credit cards that offer annual fees, like secured credit cards. They offer maybe, I think, like $25 annual fee. There are some credit cards out there that do an $85 or $100 annual fee. And you also have to be careful, because there are credit cards that will bill your annual fee monthly, so you think you're getting a break and you're not. You want to do the math and make sure that monthly fee multiplied by 12 is going to be worth it for you. And I'll give you an example of that. So my husband was rebuilding credit, and he ended up with the infamous Credit One credit card, and he was being billed, I think, $7 a month. Well, it wasn't working out, because as time went on and he built credit, guess what? He had other credit cards with no annual fees. So he did call Credit One and talk to them about it, and they waived the annual fee for like a year, and then they waived it again for like 6 months. But it got to a point where we weren't using it. We were trying to use it just to make sure there was some type of usage on it, and it just wasn't worth it for us. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how can the credit cards affect you. Now, in my opinion, credit cards can be the devil if you use them incorrectly and you're not responsible, or they can be your saving grace if you're responsible with your credit cards. Now, for me personally and my family, we're at that point in life where we actually just use the credit cards for the benefit of the points and the rewards, cashback, whatever that we have at the time. And so we use credit cards to pay our home bills. So the home bills are paid on the credit cards, and then I pay the credit card off monthly. But we also have the credit cards that we may want to make major purchases on, to see, you know, if we're gonna, how much money we're gonna get back on that purchase. I love using my Chase card in particular, because I get a lot of cashback rewards on my Chase card. But besides that, the credit cards can affect you in different ways. So you have a lot of people who are not responsible and do not use their credit cards, as I once was, and they max out credit cards. Now, being a mortgage underwriter, I can tell you that we kind of consider, and even before being a mortgage underwriter, I used to underwrite credit cards, car loans, things like that. And we kind of consider, if you are over 50%, you're basically maxed out. Now, mind you, the guideline is you want to be between 20 to 30% of the credit card limit if you use the credit card. So I'll give an example of that. If you have a $10,000 credit card, you want to be no more than about $2,000 to $2,500 when it comes down to what you're using on that credit card. But if you have a credit card and if you're using that same $10,000 credit card, you're potentially over $3,000, then that can affect you. Now, when it comes down to the credit report, and it shows that you have a $10,000 credit card and you have already used over $3,000, that can potentially lower your credit score. It may not always be that, but it could potentially lower your credit score. Even if it's just 1 or 2 points, sometimes it will lower your credit score. Now, let's talk about that piece. So some people say that, well, I had a 911 emergency or something like that, and I had to use my credit card. And so you had a $10,000 credit card. You already had $3,000 on it. Now you have to put another $5,000 on it. You need to expect for your credit score to drop somewhat, because now, and I'm just saying that that's your only credit card. There could be a difference, and I'll get to that in a second. So that's your only credit card. It's $10,000, and you basically max it out. Your score will somewhat drop. Now let's double that amount and say you have 2 credit cards. One is $10,000, and both of them are $10,000 a piece. Okay, and you have so now you have around $4,000 to $5,000 that you can use on those credit cards total, without maybe some type of without it somewhat having an effect on your credit, right? Well, let's say you have that same emergency and you have already $3,000 spread across the other cards, and you put another $5,000 on there. That may not potentially affect your score because you have a total of $20,000. And so to have a total of $8,000 on the credit cards, it may not potentially affect your score. Now, going with that, let's jump into closing credit cards. There's so many myths when it comes down to credit cards, and I'm not gonna lie, you guys. I have about, first of all, let's put it out there. I had over $40,000 in credit card debt, and I had well over 30 credit cards, okay? And so I had a lot of store cards, Macy's, JCPenney, TJ Maxx, and here's the gotcha. I had Gap, Old Navy, and Banana Republic, and you can use those credit cards at each one of those stores, but I had a card for each store. So I decided, you know what, I don't need all these cards. I don't want all these cards. I don't care how it's going to affect my score. I'll get it back up. So at this time, I was well into the 700s, and I went on ahead and I was closing out credit cards. Now here's where it gets tricky. A lot of credit cards I had those credit cards for so long, like TJ Maxx, JCPenney, Macy's. I had those for years, but I had well over $60,000 in available credit, okay? So whereas I thought it was gonna really hurt my score, I was closing out like 6 cards at a time just to give myself some time to get acclimated to it in case my score adjusted. So what ended up happening was my score dropped like 1 or 2 points, 2 or 3 points. But then I remember when I closed out my Old Navy, it dropped 30 points. But because I had that card for over 7 years. So that can affect your score. You have to think about the time that the amount of time that you've had credit cards before you close those out. That's why we always tell you that it's best to leave them open. But for me, I'm just saying, for me and my family, it was not, I didn't want to keep all those credit cards because I didn't need them. I had major credit cards, and I felt that I had outgrown having all of those cards. At that time, I don't know what was going through my mind. I was just, child. Anywho, so a couple things you want to think about when you're closing out a credit card. The ratio, which means the available balance versus the debt that you owe on the credit cards, as well as the timing, which means the amount of time that you've had the credit cards. Now, again, there's really no right or wrong to it, but I'll tell you, as somebody who is, an underwriter or in the financial world, we will always tell you never to close out your credit card and to just kind of let it stay open, because eventually it will close out itself, okay? So I mentioned I had an Old Navy credit card. Old Navy, Synchrony Bank is owned by Synchrony Bank at the time. Synchrony Bank is one of those companies that if you do not use the credit card or show activity within every 6 months, they will begin to lower your, they will begin to lower your available credit. So they kept lowering my available credit, and then eventually they just closed out the card. So, and that didn't affect my score because they closed out the card. And that just may have been at that time. So I just want to make sure you guys know that's one of the things you need to be aware of, that eventually the retailers will close out the cards anyway. But if you have, I'm going to say, if you have a card that, like a Capital One card, a lot of us start out with Capital One. And I can even use my husband as an example. He had that Credit One card that he had for years because that was one of the first cards that he started out with to rebuild credit. And when we closed it, he had enough debt that he had, not debt, available credit that he already had, and he's had that credit for a good amount of time, that closing out that one card did not hurt his score. But on the other hand, if you have, let's say, $50,000 in credit, you owe $25,000, and you close out $10,000 worth of credit cards, that could potentially affect your score because now your ratio has went up and your debt versus the available balance is up. It's not level. So those are, I'm trying to give you some things that you could think about before you decide to close out credit cards. The other thing that could potentially affect your score is, again, the timing. So if you had a card for 10 years and you decide to close out that card, that could potentially drop your credit score because now, if you notice, it says the amount of the average time that you've had credit. Well, that 10 years is factored in the average time that you've had credit. When I closed out all those credit cards, I went from having an average time of about 8 or 9 years for credit to it was almost 3 years for average time. So that did affect my score. And then I jumped up and got like 2 major credit cards to kind of balance it out. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just telling you what I did. So things like that can affect your score. So I'm trying not to make this video too long. Thank you so much for sticking with me. If you have questions or comments, please leave them down below. I will try my best to answer them as quickly as possible. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, bye.